124. Let's get to the first Strangers film. We're going to be doing all three to date. So, The Strangers, then Pray at Night, and then The Strangers Chapter 1, which just came out. So, The Strangers came out in 2008. It's written and directed by Brian Bertino. Stars Liv Tyler, Scott Speedman, not really many others besides the strangers themselves. And the synopsis is a young couple staying in an isolated vacation home are terrorized by three unknown assailants. So first thing, this is going to be available on our bonus show page at filmbuds.bandcamp.com, where you can check out our other shows and, covers franchises, things like that. So if you want to hear all these episodes uninterrupted together, you can check that out there. But getting into this first movie, so I didn't see the first one as a whole probably until about a year ago. And I had seen bits and pieces of it, but for a while I was never really a big horror fan or a big home invasion fan, so I just sort of stayed away from it. And then I was like, all right, something is piquing my curiosity, so I'll give it a look. And I was really, really pleasantly surprised. I think this movie, it doesn't in any way break the barriers, reinvent the genre of the home invasion B movie slasher sort of style. But to me, what it sets out to do, it does really well. And if it's not one for you, if it doesn't really connect with you or wow you, I get that, because it is fairly restrained, kind of mellow in how it presents itself. But I watched this for the first time on an iPhone, and I was like on the edge of my seat. And I think that's saying something. Like, I was able to watch it just holding my phone up to my face and watching it when I had some time, and I was fully engaged. Had those chills at times. It was really suspenseful. I thought that the best thing about it to me, and I think maybe it's sort of lost on some viewers, not intentionally so, I think it's just depends on where you watch it, how you watch it. But the thing that I think this does really well, better than many other home invasion movies, is sound work. I think the sound design of how they either incorporate sound or the lack thereof is done so well. Like, the silence, I love when a movie, especially horror, can use silence to their advantage, use it effectively. And I think when Scott Speedman leaves, the husband leaves, and Liv Tyler is just in this very quiet, dark vacation home all by herself, there's just something about how quiet the movie actually is that immediately makes me think, all right, what's going on? And usually when a movie starts like this, there's eerie scores, there's a lot of shock factors, right off the bat to try and get you artificially engaged and scared. But I think this one, it's like dead quiet for the first 10-15 minutes. And I was really not expecting that, and how they set up certain things with like her cell phone, where she is in the house, and then that initial knock is, again, that's how it's just little things. It's little pieces of sound, big or small. Like, that knock is intimidating. And I think that's something that is sort of lost in the other movies, especially the newest one, which we'll get to. But Brian Bertino was inspired to make this because of, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is what it is based on what I read. When he was younger, his neighborhood had this series of like burglaries where these people would knock on people's doors at night, and then if they didn't answer, they would just break in. And so it is, in this one, saying, at the beginning of the movie, inspired by a true story, based on real events, etc., etc. I can't speak to all what's real, what's not, but I think that in some ways elevates it. It doesn't, I don't know what's real, what's not, but I think that the true story aspect helps, at least in some ways. And then also another thing I really like about this one is it really does not feel supernatural at all. This feels, I think, as realistic. I mean, there are certain cinematic flourishes and plot points and all that, but I think that it really, more so than many others like it, sets itself in a true reality. Like, this is something that could theoretically happen. It's not like Michael Myers where he's unkillable. He's always going to come back, for 30 years and terrorize the same person. It's three random people who we don't know terrorizing some random couple, and that's it. And then moving on to the next one. I mean, in some ways, it's almost like Scream, where it's just people reinventing the character every single movie, you know, like, oh, well, the original killer's dead. I'm going to pick it back up because I'm inspired by them, you know? And so I think that's very effective and very chilling because, you know, anyone could just knock on your house one night and start terrorizing you, you know, depending on where you are. So I think that is a very potent piece of suspense and horror. But talking about specific things in the movie, the sequence towards the beginning where the man, this lead stranger, is behind Liv Tyler in the distance, I think is such an effective shot. Like just that, oh my God, there he is. And again, there's nothing that is completely new, like, oh my God, how do they do that? It's all just playing within the genre incredibly effectively. And it's little things like that. It's the cell phone being discovered, being shattered, the I mean, there's like some jump scares, like where she opens the blinds and he's standing right there. I think that's good. And even just the iconic part of the strangers group where they knock on the door and say, "Is Tamara home?" I think that for whatever reason just works for me. And that's something that I think, again, we'll get to in the other movies, especially the last one, which it doesn't work as well. And perhaps it just works better in this one because it's the first one and it's fresher. But that and then the light bulb being twisted, intentionally twisted off, and them standing in the distance. I love the look of the masks of the three strangers. I think that's very good. The sequence in the car where Scott Speedman tries to get to the car, and then there's that hand that creeps up onto the screen and taps him on the shoulder. Like, it's all things that, yeah, there are certain moments where I'm like, all right, how would they be able to get away without being noticed in situations like that? Or how did they manage to get into the house without being heard, that sort of thing. But for the most part, it's like, all right, I could see this being a real person. And also the barn sequence where she tries to get out to the barn and make the radio call. I love that. The moment where, and you could say it's predictable, whatever. I think the whole movie is fairly predictable, but I don't think it's trying to say that it's not, where Scott Speedman accidentally shoots his friend. And I think I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I just feel like, and you know, criticize the movie if you want. If it doesn't work, that's cool. I get it. But I think that this movie, for whatever reason, with me, the predictable aspects felt like it was a believable thing. You know, I could see if you're scared and you have a shotgun in your hand and you think someone's coming into your house and you don't know about anyone else coming there, you're probably going to fire at them, you know, whereas in something like some of the other horror franchises where characters do very predictable, stupid things, it's like, all right, well, we're already in a suspension of disbelief. And so that doesn't really work for me in this, but it does in The Strangers for whatever reason. So I think that all those things that some people may criticize, I sort of accept, and I think it works. But the biggest thing, again, is like the score, the atmosphere, the mood. That is top notch. And I think if you want to know how to do a home invasion film, you could watch this and learn quite a bit. But besides that, I think Liv Tyler is very good. I haven't seen her in a lot of other things besides this and Lord of the Rings, but I think she's good. I don't love Scott Speedman. I haven't seen him in much at all. He's all right in this, doesn't do anything amazing, but I like him. The sequence at the end, the pretty iconic scene at the end where they're both tied up and the strangers are standing in front of them and they both get stabbed, and then they ask, "Why are you doing this?" And they said, "Because you were home." I think that's such a great line and really makes you think, well, like I was just saying earlier, it could be anyone. Anyone could go and do this, theoretically, especially out in the countryside at vacation homes where there's nobody. Cut the phone line, no phone reception, done, you know, game over. And they just did it because lots of times the best motive, the scariest motive, is there is no motive. Well, you were here, so we decided to terrorize you for the fun of it. It's not, well, you killed my mom, you know, the government is against me, that sort of thing. It's, well, you were here. We thought we'd have some fun with you, you know, and I think that really set the stage for a very effective, refreshing, sort of grounded, modern home invasion franchise, which, I mean, I guess they weren't really setting out to do a franchise at that point, but still very good. And that line at the end where the strangers are driving away and the two church boys talk to the girl and they ask, "Are you sinners?" And she goes, "Sometimes." Like, it's just little moments. And maybe some people call that cliched or stupid, but that works for me every single time. And I've seen it maybe 3 or 4 times at this point. And so I'm a big, big fan of it. It's definitely one of my favorite home invasion films, one of the most memorable for me. And I think that if you want to watch it, if you haven't seen it, or if you want to revisit it, I would watch it with the best sound setup that you can, all the lights out. Like, it's the kind of movie, stereotypically so, that you want to watch in the dark, quiet, sound loud, that sort of thing. But yeah, I really, really enjoy it. I think it's one that will always kind of stick with me. Even from the first time I saw it, it really made a mark. And I'm not upset that they're doing more. I just wish that, and we'll get to it, I just wish that they had done something different with it, at least as of yet. But is what it is. Still have this one. So that one is a light 4.5 out of 5.